Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I occasionally poke around on the internet looking for news stories and just reading stuff to stay on top of what's happening. And I ran across a story yesterday. Nobody sent me, surprisingly, but it's out of Detroit. Click on Detroit, ran at WDIV. That's the NBC affiliate here. WDIV, of course, is, I'm guessing, Detroit 4, Channel 4, Roman numerals IV. But why did it take 2 years for the Wayne County morgue to identify a man's remains when his ID was found on him? They found a man's remains, and his ID was found pretty much right next to him. And it took the Wayne County morgue 2 years to identify him. The family now wants answers. And Wayne County, of course, is the county that is the home of Detroit. And it is a very populous county, but they've got their issues, shall we say. So skeletal remains wrapped in a blanket were discovered in July of 2019 in the backyard of a home on Livernois Avenue on Detroit's west side. And there was a bullet discovered with the remains. So we're talking about the remains have been probably out there for a while. The Wayne County Medical Examiner reported the cause of death was a gunshot wound, and they ruled the death a homicide. So the victim has since been identified as William Hagan, a father of 4 boys. His family has many questions about the death, and they're questioning now how his remains were handled by the morgue. He was cremated without the family being informed, and meanwhile, they have yet to figure out who did this or why. William Hagan's sister-in-law has been looking into the case for the last 2 years. She's been trying to solve his murder and find out what was going on inside the Wayne County morgue. She said, according to a homicide detective, he had mentioned there was a driver's license with my brother-in-law's name on it, and that's how they found us. Meanwhile, the man's mother says, once my daughter-in-law started digging, she started talking to people that I would have never even crossed my mind. The family's first problem was how they had to wait for the morgue to identify the body, even though his ID was found with the remains. The morgue told the family they had to send DNA out to confirm his identity. The DNA was sent, and the family waited, and they kept calling the morgue and holding out hope that, of course, that it wasn't their loved one. William Hagan's son, Drew, said, I held out a lot of hope. I was hoping it wasn't him. After 2 years went by, they contacted Local 4, WDIV, and Karen Drew, a reporter from Local 4, started making phone calls. And again, this is an example of the media getting involved, and suddenly things happen. So after Karen Drew started making phone calls, it just took a couple weeks, and the DNA results popped up. And it said, yep, it's him, DNA match. The University of Michigan Health System is who currently runs the Wayne County morgue, and they released a statement. And they're currently running the morgue because the last organization running it was doing it incompetently. Michigan Medicine has great sympathy for any family who has experienced a delay in receiving information about a deceased relative or friend at the Wayne County morgue. We strive to do our best to care for every deceased person at the morgue and to serve their surviving families and friends with respect. In the case of William Hagan, a wallet with an ID was found near the remains in July. Because of the condition of the remains, the ID could not be definitively associated with them. The family was notified the next day, and family members provided DNA sampling that was sent for analysis to Texas. The lab results were significantly delayed at that lab and only became available recently. The cremated remains are at Our Lady of Hope in Brownstown Township. So, a couple issues. They're blaming this on a delay at the lab, but they just jump to the cremated remains are over here. Michigan Medicine is committed to serving the needs of our Wayne County families in a timely fashion. There are services, some highly specialized, which can only be done by outside agencies, which may sometimes result in delays. We are strongly committed to continuously improving our services and are working on a number of corrective actions, including hiring a full-time employee dedicated to identifying individuals and a web-based portal designed to share information that could lead to identification. The family did not give permission to cremate the remains. So William Hagan's sister says, it shouldn't take 2.5 years to get those answers. And who gave them the right to do that? Who said they could do that with respect to cremation? And the question, of course, still is, who killed the man? He was found, shot, with his body left in the backyard of a home, and his cell phone was found with him. And that's interesting, you'd think, because if you found me and you weren't sure it was me, but my cell phone is right there, you go, I bet there's a connection here. The police, at the time they were contacted by Local 4, had not bothered trying to get any information from the phone. So the people at the morgue said, well, the ID was there, but we don't know for a fact that it's linked. His cell phone was there. Okay, what do you need to have a cell phone? All kinds of stuff, such as the number of the cell phone. And then you find out who the provider is and find out who owns that cell phone. Take about, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. A Detroit police commander says what detectives are doing now is they're re-attempting to extract the data from the phone itself to see if there's any evidence there. If it wasn't done before, I don't know why. But he says they're re-attempting to extract data, which implies that they've attempted before, but he says if it was done, I don't know why, or if it wasn't done. They're re-attempting to extract the data. Detectives are now trying to extract data from the phone to see if there's evidence. To make matters worse, the family was forced to wait months before they could pick up the cremated remains. And they ask again, why did we have to wait? We found out in October and we thought, wait till January? Like, who does that? Like, they're people. People deserve to be laid to rest. Don't they understand this? Local 4 was with the family when they went to Our Lady of Hope in Brownstown Township to pick up Mr. Higgins' ashes. Detectives are actively working on the case after Local 4 brought the DNA results to their attention. Apparently, the news called and said, hey, what are you guys doing about this case now? There's been DNA. They said, it's been DNA? Hey, we'll get right on that. Crime Stoppers will be holding a press conference to bring more attention to this case. I think there's a small reward put up for it. The family was unable to get the death certificate because the morgue messed up the paperwork. Why not at this point? His children were not able to get benefits. Local 4's Karen Drew spent days working on that for them and got the situation resolved, so now they can actually file for the benefits that they can get entitled because he's passed away. They'll hold a small service for him in a week or so, and then we'll turn their attention to trying to find out who's responsible. Meanwhile, a second deputy chief, Rudy Harper, released the following statement regarding the investigation. Our missing persons sergeant indicates she periodically communicated with our assigned coordinator from the National Missing Unidentified Persons System on the status of the DNA testing. This coordinator is our contact for the University of North Texas that completes the DNA testing. I have requested the homicide officer in charge of the investigation release property to the victim's family, and I have spoken to our cell phone extraction technician, and there was no attempt to extract the data from the cell phone in 2019. This has since been completed. We are investigating why this was not completed in 2019 so we can prevent it from happening in the future. So, it's so crazy how someone can die in one city and a competent organization can come in and investigate, figure out what happened, identify who these people are, and possibly even start investigating the crime. It happens in another city, same facts, but just different city, and you've got incompetent people working for the medical examiner, and you've got people with the police force who are either incompetent or overworked or both. And so you've got somebody, and they find a body. Here's a body. We found a body. Police come in, medical examiner comes in, and we hear later that there was identification and a cell phone with the body. And it took them 2.5 years to figure out officially who this was. 2.5 years. And now they've got excuses. They say, well, there's some delays down there in Texas at the DNA testing center. But yet when the journalist calls, things suddenly start happening. And then when someone tells the police, by the way, did you know there was a cell phone they found there? They found a cell phone. Oh, yeah, we've got that. We're going to re-access that to see if we can't re-extract some re-information out of it. What? Seriously? A cell phone. It's almost better than identification in terms of the ID that's in your wallet versus your cell phone, because they can, like I said, run the number and find out the name and address of the person who this phone is too. Now, I understand people say, Steve, what if it's in his wife's name? What if it's his work phone? Really? You don't think they can figure that out? So they will be able to figure that out. But also, there might be information on the phone to help them find who did this to him. What if someone called him and said, go out here, I'm going to meet you, and then, boom, bad things happen. That last person who called might be important to know. Of course, now it's 2.5 years later. The information is getting stale along with everything else. So there are a lot of questions in this case, and it's sad because if it had happened in, Grand Rapids, this wouldn't have happened. You hear about these stories over and over again out of Detroit. And I remember doing stories not too long ago about a situation in the medical examiner's office down there and how messed up it was. And so apparently they've turned that now over to the University of Michigan Health System. And the University of Michigan Health System is a very, very well-run system. The question is, are they given the tools and the money necessary? Do they have the manpower to handle all these cases? And yeah, this might be a difficult case. It might be a difficult case. But the explanation as to why they didn't look at the man's ID and his cell phone and go, oh, we know who this guy is. I understand you got to make it a positive identification, but it shouldn't take 2.5 years. Should not take 2.5 years. So it's from Click on Detroit, WDIV4. Why did it take 2 years for the Wayne County morgue to identify a man's remains when his ID and his cell phone were found with him? Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Think of unhappiness as a job you've walked out on.